Hi, this is Mike, Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at Arctic's Freezer A13X, a cooler which I'm not sure why it actually exists. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at Arctic's Freezer A13X. This is a relatively small form factor cooler for AM4 AMD processors and has got a TDP rating of around about 95 watts, although that technically isn't completely accurate, but the testing they've done with this is with a Ryzen 5 3600. So if you're looking at this and you've got a Ryzen 9 3900 or something along those lines, then this probably isn't for you. But if you have maybe a slightly older Ryzen, 2nd gen, or maybe you've got a newer, lower TDP processor, this may be just the thing you need, especially if you're looking at putting it into a relatively small form factor case. This CPU cooler has a 92mm fan, so therefore everything is slightly smaller, and also it has one less heat pipe than traditionally you would see on a 120mm cooler. So everything is slightly reduced, including the price. Now the price on this at the moment in the UK, you can pick one of these up for in the region of about £20. Now often you do see the odd bargain every now and then on Amazon or eBay, so do check it out. You may find one for as low as £15, which is the cheapest I've actually seen this for. Other places I've seen it skyrocket up to 25 or even £30. So yeah, the market is a bit of a mess at the moment, but certainly do shop around, but you should be paying around about the £20 mark. So let's take a look around the packaging and go through some of the specifications. Then we'll do a quick installation on our motherboard here, which is a micro ATX board using an AM4 processor. See how easy it is, which actually, this is one of the key selling features of this actual cooler. The fitting mechanism is, yeah, pretty darn good. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think they've learned a few lessons from possibly Noctua, and the AMD mounting system does look like it's got some competition. Anyway, let's go through the packaging, take a look at it, and we'll find out more a little bit later on. So looking at the front of the packaging, first of all, you've got a 6-year limited warranty. Also there's a QR code which you can scan with your mobile phone and check out all the instructions on Arctic's own site. As per usual, you don't get a ton of instructions with this. It's all designed to be read online, all part of Arctic's kind of green ambitions. As it says at the bottom, so it's a Freezer A13X compact AMD CPU cooler. Moving around to the sides, you've got various descriptions in various languages. I'll give you some close-ups of that right now. Also, again, you've got the QR code you can scan to get instructions for various languages. On the back, goes through some of the more kind of beneficial features. So you've got a pressure optimized fan, which looks a lot like it's designed around the P-series fans, even though this technically isn't a P-series fan because those are P120s, but it certainly does borrow a lot of their kind of looks and technology from what I can tell. Also, you've got 3 direct touch heat pipes, all 3 of which measure at 6mm. You've also got a small form factor for optimized cooling capacities, and also you've got a fluid dynamic bearing, which is always a good thing to see. At the very bottom here, it does have some comparisons. So they compared it with the AMD Wraith Spire, the Freezer 13, which is Arctic's own, and also the Freezer A13X. Now, whilst it does come out on top, unfortunately, it's still pretty high. So this is with a Ryzen 5 3600X, overclocked to 3.8 GHz on all cores, and it's got to 86 degrees C, which is still, as far as I'm concerned, kind of scary territory. I wouldn't want my processor getting to 86 degrees on a regular basis, albeit this is under load, under stressful conditions, Prime 95, full testing. Realistically, most people aren't going to do that, but certainly, even though that's just a Ryzen 5 3600X, that does still seem to be pretty hot. Although, having said that, the Freezer 13 did worse, 4 degrees worse, 90 degrees C, and the old Wraith Spire, unfortunately, AMD stock cooler got to 93 degrees. So it's not a huge drop in temperatures, but certainly because Arctic's fans generally are pretty quiet, it is going to be quieter. It's going to look nicer as well. Well, that's arguable. So that is why I wonder why this actually exists, apart from being the fact it's quite compact. Realistically, I would much rather spend an additional £5 and go for the Freezer 34, possibly the CO edition. The standard 34 is around about £25 in certain vendors here in the UK, and often does drop down to around the £20 mark. So a lot of the esports versions of the Freezer 34 have rocketed in price to the like £40 plus mark, but still the Freezer 34, the standard edition, you can still pick up at a pretty decent price. So if you are looking at this kind of processor or slightly higher, then I would certainly point you in that direction. Moving around onto the side of the box, we've got the technical specifications. Again, I'll give you some close-ups of that so you can see it. I think we've pretty much mentioned most of it already. So you've got those 3 6mm direct touch heat pipes, aluminium fins, there's 44 of them, and a thickness of 0.4mm, which not particularly exciting. It does come with its own pre-applied thermal compound, which is MX2, and the fan itself, just a single fan on this one, 92mm, and that has got a RPM of somewhere between 300 and 2000 RPM, controlled by PWM obviously. Fluid dynamic bearing, as we said, 4-pin connector, noise level 0.3 sound, which I never really got my head around the sounds against decibels, so I'll let you guys work that out for yourselves. Now the dimensions is probably what most people are going to be interested in if you're looking at this type of cooler. So the maximum height on this one is 137mm, and you're looking at 108.5 wide, and the depth is 85.3. So it is actually quite a diminutive size. Certainly, even with something like the VXR case we've got behind, I could quite easily put this in and it would be clearing the glass very, very easily. So yeah, there is definitely a market for this, but I think it's a very, very niche market. Anyway, let's take a look inside. So let's go through the packaging. So first of all, you get the usual deal. So you get your Freezer A13X installation guide. So you just scan that and you can check out the details there. Also, you get a thank you for choosing Arctic, and there's a whole bunch of details there, so if you want to contact them you can do. Next up, we'll take a look at the accessories box. So in our accessories box we get 2 mounting brackets, and as you can see, yes, they do look very similar to, I suppose they're actually they're very similar to some of the original Arctic ones as well, but just for some reason it just reminded me of the Noctua ones for some reason, I don't know why. But anyway, those are pretty nice looking, and they've got that kind of recessed channel, so when you're installing it into the motherboard, then they would go kind of that side up, so there's like a ridge in there. So you've got your mounting brackets, and then there's a little baggie with the mounting pillars and some thumb screws. So you've got 4 mounting pillars, which obviously, for those of you who are not sure about AM4 mounting systems, generally on the back plate there's 4 pillars or mounting areas, so you can just screw those into there. And there is actually a marking on the barrel itself, so you can tell which way up it goes. And essentially the marking should be at the bottom. You'll know what it is because the threads are so very different. So if you are concerned, maybe what you could do is get one of the thumb screws, tighten up a little bit, and you know it fits on one end and not the other. So that takes the kind of guesswork out of it. And last of all, we have the actual cooler itself. And actually it does look very nice, and especially if you're going for one of those monochromatic builds, the black and white I think is going to look very, very nice. You've got the 5-blade fan, just check, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 5 blades. And you can probably see from some of the footage and possibly some of the B-roll we've shot already, you can see the angle of the blade. So they've got a really, really kind of pressure optimized angle to those blades. So they're really going to do well against that fin stack, which is actually not overly dense. I would say that's pretty average. As you can see there, you can just about see through it reasonably well. Again, we'll show some B-roll of that so you can see what it looks like. The one thing I'm slightly concerned of already is the plastic cowling is a little bit loose. It's difficult for me to show you this on camera, but hopefully you can. There's definitely a wheel coming through on the microphone. I can certainly hear it myself. Hopefully it's going to come through. So yeah, although this is kind of like a really cool idea, makes it nice and easy, so you can just pull this front off and remove it from the actual stack itself. Actually, if we take that out of there, it gives us a bit more room to maneuver. So as you can see, there is the fin stack. So it's a pretty decent looking fin stack. Again, 3 heat pipes on there, 6mm each, and nice to see those screw mountings. I do like that. That is a really nice mounting system. And it's nice to see there's no plastic clips on the fans either, because I do struggle with those. Underneath the plastic cap, there is the pre-applied Arctic MX2, which actually has been done particularly well. So the fin stack itself, as you can possibly see, there are a few slight imperfections in it as it's come from the factory. Whether that is intentional or not, I don't know. It doesn't appear to have, I can't imagine there being any specific benefit to that. But they certainly, there's 4 fins which are certainly a little bit smaller. That may be to do with the mounting mechanism. It doesn't appear to tally up with that as far as I can tell. So, you know, it doesn't have any bearing on it at all. But anyway, so you've got this cowling, or the shield. There is inside of there a 92mm fan, which I did actually look at this prior to doing the review, and I did actually look on Arctic's own installation guide of this. And somebody asked the question actually in the comment section, if inevitably, as it will eventually happen, when the fan fails, can you replace it? And from what I can tell, that doesn't seem to be the case. That appears to be a complete fan and cowling assembly. There doesn't appear to be any obvious joins, and even so much as the cabling for the actual fan itself is kind of hardwired or kind of melted into the plastic there. So I don't see that that will come out. I think the actual cowling itself is a specific piece. I don't want to break it to try and get it out because it's already loose enough on the bracket as it is, but yeah, I would say from their actual report on their site, or from the YouTube rather, I don't think they've got that quite right. You may want to check that. So certainly you could probably get another fan to fit on there, but you've got a 6-year warranty. It's kind of £20-ish, so it's not going to be the end of the world, but still would have been nice to have seen some option to have this to be swapped out and easily, maybe even with a different fan, maybe a Noctua or an RGB one or something along those lines. I think that would have made life a little bit easier. But certainly there doesn't appear to be any way of removing that fan. It does appear to be a complete assembly. So anyway, plastic clips on the side, that is essentially all that holds this on. It's kind of cool that the cowling is at the top, so it pushes air and directs it over the top of the exposed parts of the actual heat pipes. Although realistically, at the top of the heat pipe, generally those don't tend to get very hot at all, because how heat pipes work, they get very hot at the bottom, and essentially the heat shouldn't ever reach the very tips. It's very rare that that should happen. So yeah, whether there's much point in that, I don't know. Again, you've got this surface area on top, so it's going to push some air over the top of that. Let's push that back on. So yeah, it does kind of clip in place, but it's... see if I can wiggle on that side so you can see. That's probably being exaggerated a little bit by my hands, but you get the idea. There is a bit of looseness there. So when this is going to be spinning at kind of 1500 to 2000 RPM at that higher rev range, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a bit of turbulence or a bit of movement in that. Oh well, we'll find out when we install it. So there is a cable coming off it. You've got a 4-pin PWM, as we discussed earlier. And again, it's been actually routed underneath there quite nicely, so it keeps it away from that lower area. Yeah, pretty decent. It is what it is. It's a relatively cheapish fan assembly with 3 heat pipes. So best thing for us to do is to turn the camera around to the motherboard. We'll do a quick installation, see how easy it is, and then we'll be breaking off. I'm going to put this actually into another system because the processor in there is rubbish. So I'm going to put it in my system behind me, which is a Ryzen 5 3600, which is closer to what the target of this is designed to be. And yeah, we'll see how well it does, and we'll compare it possibly against the cooler which is in there, which is a little bit unfair, but maybe we'll just see how this does first. So let's get right onto it. Okay, so let's start off. So this is the base setup. So first thing we need to do is to remove the standard AM4 retention section. For those of you that are wondering why I'm not actually doing it with the processor which is on there, the one that's on there is actually only a Ryzen 3000G, which doesn't generate a tremendous amount of heat anyway, to be honest with you. So I think that would be a bit of a lackluster experiment. So the next thing to do is to install these pillars, and there is, you can just about make out there is like an indentation on there. So basically the indentation goes towards the bottom. So the coarser part of the thread, as you can see, is what screws into the motherboard, and the finer section is what the thumb screw goes onto. So we've got our 4 screws in position, so all we do is just do them up hand tight. They don't need to be particularly tight, just hand tight's absolutely fine. And then once you've got that, then you can actually grab the mounting brackets, which are these, and this goes over there. So those holes are for AM4. The other holes that are on there potentially could be for Intel, but it does state specifically on the box that this is for AM4 only, so we will not be trying that. So that gives a pretty good clearance for the CPU, so you can still actually get the CPU physically installed, as you can see there. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Don't obviously install it that way round, because, well, yeah, that's bad. So now what we need to do is to use the 4 thumb screws. So there's 3 plus our 1, and now we just tighten those up on the top. I would suggest with these, again, just do them up hand tight to begin with, and then when you're done, get a crosshead screwdriver and just firm it down a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and do the same on the other side, so just straighten up a little bit. Possibly because there is a little bit of slack there, maybe don't over tighten them completely to begin with, because potentially there could be a little bit of a tolerance on those screw mounts, but we'll find out very shortly. I would say actually the thumb screws could probably do with being a little bit bigger, a little bit taller, because they are a little bit fiddly if you've got slightly larger hands. Anyway, so that's that bit done. So next thing to do is to get the cooler itself, and we'll remove the plastic retainer, take the cowling off, because otherwise you won't be able to access the screws. So, like I said, flat side is this side, so that goes towards the front, towards your RAM. So I would line up that screw first of all, and give it a couple of turns. And then on the other side, actually I don't think that even locked in. Yes, it did. So then on the other side, do the same, few turns, and then just go through a couple of turns, just evening out the pressure, and do that until the screw is completely tightened. There is a spring clamp on there. There we go, we're getting to the end there. Quite a few turns there, and that worked out quite well. So that is evenly done. So that is how it should look when you're done. And don't worry, you can't over tighten them. There is a limit to how far they can go, and that does put that into place. So then all we need to do is to attach the cowling again, which just pushes on and snaps into place. And then last of all is to connect up the CPU cooler connection, which depending on your motherboard may be in a slightly different position, but ours is just here. So we can put ours there. And that is essentially it. Job done. Pretty straightforward, nice mounting system actually, do like that. So there we go, there is the cooler installed as you can see. So now all that's left for me to do is to basically take it all apart again and test it on the system behind me. So we'll be back after that. Okay, so we've done some testing and we're back, and actually I'm pleasantly surprised. I was, yeah, pleasantly surprised is probably the best way I can sum up my experience. So we have tested this on the system behind me, which is currently got in there a Fractal S34, S36, which is a 360mm AIO cooler. Now the temperatures in that ran about 34 degrees, well actually 29 degrees was the minimum, because I've actually repasted it just to check. I did compare the same paste, so I used Arctic Silver 5 on both, just as a fair comparison, even though obviously it's a completely mismatched thing. But with the Fractal S36, or whatever model it is, we've got low temperatures, about 29 degrees, and we were maxing out around about 62, which, yeah, is absolutely fine, and it was boosting about 100 megahertz over the standard precision boost overclock speed. So yeah, I did tweak that manually in the BIOS myself. If you want to see how to manually overclock in a BIOS, click on the link up here and you'll find out how to do that. Anyway, this cooler actually, surprisingly, considering it's only got a 92mm fan, and actually a very quiet 92mm fan, I didn't find it any noisier than any of the fans in the system, especially under full load, which surprised me. I thought this was going to be quite noisy, but actually very, very quiet. Temperature wise, lows of in there, low to mid 30s, which again, absolutely acceptable. What surprised me though, after running Cinebench for a few runs, didn't really get much over 70 degrees, which I was kind of expecting a lot worse than that. Bearing in mind that the other cooler that's in there, water cooled AIO, got to run about 62 degrees. So to be within 8 degrees of a 360mm rad, is kind of scary. Now granted, yes, it's only a Ryzen 5 3600, but I think a lot of the people that watch this channel, and certainly those that are interested in Arctic products, basically like to put value and performance paramount. Branding and all that other kind of stuff is a completely separate thing. So I think it's actually a really good cooler. I was expecting to hate it, and secretly, before I started this video, I was speaking to Kath about it, and I was like, oh, here we go. I'm gonna have to rip into this cooler. It doesn't appear to be great. But my initial thoughts, I've got to completely put to one side, because actually, genuinely surprised. And I think that is a problem with a lot of the PC market these days. You see a product and you make your initial judgments on it, and you kind of take that, and that is kind of like, that's it, set in stone. Yes, it's only got 3 heat pipes, it's not going to be great. Or it's only got a 92mm fan, it's not going to be as good as a 120mm fan. But actually, if you take a look at some of the testing I've done from previous videos and look around on the internet at various things, this is surprisingly close to a lot of the really good competitors. And the fact that it gets within even 10 degrees of a 360mm AIO is, well, testament to Arctic's engineering and abilities. So as much as I didn't want to, I've got to recommend it. It's actually a really decent cooler. It fits in a very, very compact case. Again, my VXR behind me, TechWare, maximum I think is 140mm, 145mm for the cooler. This fit in absolutely fine, and I could realistically quite easily swap out my 360 rad, put 3 RGB fans in there, and go with an air cooling setup with this, which I didn't expect I was going to say. So yes, surprised but pleased. So if you want to check this out, there'll be links in the video description. Just to put it out there, Arctic did send it to me free of charge for review purposes. They haven't paid me to say anything, and they won't be reviewing this content before I actually post it. So yeah, you can take my word with a large grain of salt if you wish, but certainly I would strongly suggest, if you're in the market for a cooler which is slightly less than 120mm, or potentially a little bit smaller in size and cost, then yeah, definitely worth a look. So this has been the Freezer A13X. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you guys in the very next video. Thanks for watching.